Finally, she typed out her post. I'm a young woman who's been having an affair with a powerful pastor. It started with fear, but now, I don't know what I feel. Someone is trying to help me expose him, but I'm confused. Should I? Or should I just let things continue as they are? Her finger hovered over the post button before she finally clicked it. Almost instantly, the comments began pouring in. One read, "Expose him. Men like that don't deserve to get away with this." Another said, "You should tell your family and friends and make this public. You'll save other girls from him." But the majority of the responses were different. "You're lucky. Enjoy it while it lasts. He must really like you if he's taking care of you. What's the problem? It's not a bad thing. Don't ruin your blessings." Fiyin's heart raced as she read the comments. Fiyin's breath quickened. "No, no, no," she whispered, shaking her head as though that would banish the thoughts. She quickly scrolled past the post and slammed her phone face down on the bed. But her heart wouldn't stop racing. "Why can't I just forget?" she muttered to herself. Before she could sink deeper into her thoughts, a knock at the door startled her. "Fiyin!" her mother's sharp voice called. Fiyin reluctantly got up and unlocked the door. Her mother, dressed in a vibrant Ankara wrapper and matching headscarf, stood in the doorway. "Daddy Possibilities has sent for you," her mother said, arms akimbo. "He says there's an urgent prophecy concerning your future. He wants to see you at the church." Fiyin's heart sank. The mere mention of Daddy Possibilities sent a wave of nausea through her. She glanced at her bed, hoping to use her discomfort as an excuse. "Mummy, I'm not feeling too well," she said, clutching her stomach for added effect. "I think I need to rest." Her mother's eyes narrowed. "What do you mean, you're not feeling well? When a man of God calls, you don't give excuses. Do you want to block your blessings? Get dressed quickly, we're going." "But Mummy," Fiyin looked at her mother. "Should I just tell my mum the kind of man this pastor is?" Her gaze lingered on her mother, who was stood waiting for her to get dressed. She imagined herself speaking up, saying, "Mummy, Daddy Possibilities isn't who you think he is. He's done terrible things to me." But as quickly as the thought came, a flood of doubts drowned it. What if she doesn't believe me? The fear twisted her stomach. Her mother revered Daddy Possibilities. He was a man of God in her eyes, incapable of wrongdoing. Fiyin thought back to his chilling words the first time. "If you speak against me, you will bring a curse upon your family. Do you want your mother to suffer for your disobedience?" The memory made her chest tighten. What if he was right? What if her family truly became cursed because of her? She couldn't bear the thought of her mother, who had already sacrificed so much for her, suffering because of her actions. Silently, she vowed to keep the secret buried, even as it slowly consumed her. Resigned, she changed into a simple dress and followed her mother out of the house, her stomach churning with dread. The church was quiet when they arrived, the late afternoon sun casting long shadows across the compound. Daddy Possibilities' office, however, was well lit, its frosted glass windows glowing faintly. Fiyomi hesitated as her mother led her to the door. "Go inside," her mother instructed, her tone leaving no room for argument. "I'll be waiting in the main hall. Don't keep the man of God waiting." Fiyin swallowed hard and stepped into the office. Daddy Possibilities was seated behind his desk, a serene smile on his face as he gestured for her to come closer. "My dear Fiyin," he said warmly, standing to greet her. "It's good to see you again. The Lord has placed something urgent in my spirit concerning you." Fiyin nodded, her hands clasped tightly in front of her. She avoided his gaze, her discomfort growing with each passing second. "Come," he said, moving around the desk to stand beside her. "Let us pray together. The Lord's message is best received in the spirit of closeness." Fiyin stiffened as he placed a hand on her shoulder, the weight of it triggering a rush of memories she had tried so hard to bury. She wanted to run, to scream, but her feet felt rooted to the spot. As Daddy Possibilities began to pray, his tone shifted from solemn to something more intimate. His hand slid down her arm, and the familiar sense of helplessness washed over her. "Now, she whispered, her voice barely audible. But he ignored her protest, his actions growing bolder as he pulled her closer. Fiyin's body went rigid, her mind screaming for her to fight back, but the fear of what might happen if she resisted kept her frozen. When it was over, Fiyin stumbled out of the office, her legs shaky and her chest heavy with shame. Her mother met her at the entrance, oblivious to the turmoil in her daughter's eyes. "Did the man of God pray for you?" she asked eagerly. "Yes, Mummy," Fiyin replied, her voice barely above a whisper. "Good. Let's go home." Fiyin followed her mother silently, the weight of the day pressing down on her like a dark cloud. Back in her room that evening, Fiyin sat on her bed, staring at the blank wall in front of her. The events of the day replayed in her mind like a broken record. She wanted to cry, to scream, to tell someone what had happened, but who would believe her? Her mother thought Daddy Possibilities could do no wrong, and speaking out would only make things worse. Kunli sat up in bed, drenched in sweat, his chest heaving as he struggled to steady his breath. The dream was so vivid it felt real. He could still see Deborah's tear-streaked face, her hands stretched toward him as she cried out for help. Her voice echoed in his mind. "Kunli, please help me. Don't let it happen again." Beside him, Tola stirred, groaning as she turned to face him. "Kunle, what is it again? Why are you waking me up in the middle of the night?" "I saw Deborah," Kunle said, his voice trembling. "She was crying, Tola, crying and begging me for help. I think something's not right. I can feel it in my spirit." Tola sat up and rubbed her eyes, sighing heavily. "Kuna, how many times will I tell you that you're overthinking? Deborah's death was tragic, yes, but you need to stop torturing yourself. These dreams you're having are because of the things you're imagining about Daddy, possibilities." "But what if it's not just my imagination?" Kunle countered, his tone more resolute now. "What if God is trying to show me something? Deborah's death was so sudden and—" He paused, his voice cracking. "And it doesn't sit right with me." "Cool, please, just pray and let it go," Tola said, lying back down. "You're always looking for something that isn't there." But Kunle couldn't let it go. Tola might dismiss his concerns, but the image of Deborah's face haunted him. He made up his mind to investigate, discreetly, without telling anyone. If there was even the slightest chance that something was wrong, he owed it to Deborah's memory to find out the truth. Mrs. Rachel sat on the edge of her bed, staring at the framed picture of Deborah on her bedside table. Her daughter's smile beamed brightly back at her, a cruel reminder of what had been lost. It had been months since Deborah's tragic death, but the pain still clawed at her chest every time she closed her eyes. The house of eternal possibilities was no longer a place of solace for her. It was a constant reminder of the promises Daddy Possibilities had made, promises of deliverance, breakthroughs, and blessings that never came. Instead, she had buried her only daughter, and her heart was burdened with the guilt of not protecting her. The guilt came in waves, each more unbearable than the last. Deborah had confided in her once, mentioning how uncomfortable she felt with Daddy Possibilities' attention, but Mrs. Rachel had dismissed it, thinking it was just youthful exaggeration. "The man of God sees something special in you, Deborah," she had said at the time. Now, those words haunted her. Tears streamed down her face as she remembered the last midweek service she attended. Daddy Possibilities had preached about obedience and submission, subtly chastising those who dared to question his authority. She had felt his eyes on her the entire time, as though daring her to speak out. But she couldn't. Her voice had been swallowed by fear, shame, and doubt. That night, sitting alone in her room, she made a decision. She wouldn't return to the house of eternal possibilities. The place that once brought her hope now suffocated her with grief and regret. The following Sunday, Kunle attended church with Tola, going through the motions of the service while his mind worked on a plan. As the congregation dispersed after the closing prayer, Kunle excused himself, telling Tola he needed to have a word with the pastor. Instead of going directly to Daddy Possibility's office, Kunle lingered near the corridor leading to it. He found a quiet spot behind a pillar and waited, keeping an eye on the office door. 2 hours passed, and nothing unusual happened. Several people went in and out, mostly church workers discussing administrative matters. Kunle began to feel foolish. Maybe Tola was right, and he was letting his imagination run wild. Just as he was about to leave, he saw the office door open. His breath caught when he spotted Fiyin rushing out, her face pale and her movements hurried. She clutched her bag tightly to her chest, her eyes darting around nervously as she walked briskly toward the church exit. Kunle's heart raced. Something about her demeanor set off alarm bells in his mind. He decided to follow her, keeping a safe distance so she wouldn't notice. Fiyin left the church compound and walked along the narrow path leading to the main road. She moved quickly, glancing over her shoulder every now and then, as though she feared someone might be following her. When they were far enough from the church, Kunle quickened his pace and called out softly, "Fiyin." Fiyin froze, her shoulders stiffening as she turned around. Her wide, frightened eyes met Kunle's. "Fiyin, please don't be scared," Kunle said gently, holding up his hands to show he meant no harm. "I just want to talk to you. I noticed you leaving the pastor's office, and you looked upset. Is everything okay?" Fiyin hesitated, her mind racing. She didn't know who this man was or if she could trust him, but there was something about his concerned expression and soft tone that made her feel he might actually care. Still, she remained guarded. I don't know what you're talking about," she stammered, clutching her bag tighter. "Fiyin, I don't mean to pry," Connor continued, his voice calm and reassuring. "But if something is wrong, you don't have to go through it alone. I want to help you. Please." Fiyin looked away, her throat tightening as tears threatened to fall. She wanted to believe him, to trust that he could be her way out of the nightmare she was living. But what if he didn't believe her? What if he was just like everyone else who blindly worshipped Daddy Possibilities? Seeing her hesitation, Kunle reached into his pocket and pulled out a small card. He extended it to her cautiously. "Who?" he said. "This is my number. You don't have to say anything now if you're not ready, but if you ever feel like talking, please call me. Anytime, day or night." Again, he blinked away tears and tried to smile. Fiyin took the card with trembling hands, her heart pounding. She nodded mutely and turned to walk away, her steps hurried and unsteady. Kunle watched her go, his mind made up. Whatever was going on, he would get to the bottom of it, even if it meant confronting the man everyone called Daddy Possibilities. Back at home, Colonel couldn't stop thinking about Fiyin. Her frightened expression and nervous demeanor confirmed his worst fears. There was more to Daddy Possibilities than met the eye. He felt a mix of anger and determination bubbling inside him. Tola noticed his distracted state during dinner and frowned. "Kunle, what's wrong with you? You've barely touched your food." "It's nothing," Colonel replied, forcing a smile. "Just tired from the service." Tola didn't press further, but Kuna knew he had to keep his investigation secret. If he told Tola, she would likely dismiss him again, or, worse, confront the pastor prematurely. Meanwhile, Fiyin sat on her bed, staring at Kunle's card. Her mind was a whirlwind of emotions, fear, shame, and a flicker of hope. She wanted to call him, but doubt crept in. Could she really trust him? What if he told someone else? As the days passed, Fiyin found herself replaying their brief encounter in her mind. There was something genuine about Kunle's concern, something that made her believe he wasn't like the others. Kunle and Tunde sat at a corner table in the small cafe, their faces tense with anticipation. They had spent weeks carefully planning how to expose Daddy Possibilities, and today was the day they would finalize the details with Fiyin. Fiyin walked in, her face calm but distant, as she made her way to the table. Kunle noticed something different about her. Her usual nervousness seemed to have vanished, replaced by an unsettling sense of composure. "Fiyin, thank you for coming," Kunle said, motioning for her to sit. She smiled faintly, taking her seat. "You said it was urgent," she said. Kunle exchanged a quick glance with Tunde, then leaned forward. "Yes, we've been working on a plan to expose daddy possibilities. Tunde here is a private investigator, and he'll help us set everything up. We just need your cooperation." Fiyin tilted her head, a confused expression on her face. "Expose him? Expose him for what?" Clooney froze, his heart skipping a beat. "What do you mean?" "You told me everything, Fiyin, about what he's been doing to you. We talked about this." Fiyin's face remained blank, her tone neutral. "I don't know what you're talking about." Tunde's eyebrows shot up in surprise, but he remained silent, observing the exchange. "Fiyin," Colonel said, his voice trembling, "you told me, you trusted me. Are you saying now that none of that happened?" Fiyin shrugged, avoiding his gaze. "I must have been mistaken. Daddy Possibilities is a man of God. He's done nothing wrong to me." Kule's chest tightened. "Kule, please," he pleaded. "If someone has threatened you, tell me. We can protect you." "I haven't been threatened," Fiyin replied curtly. "I don't know what you're talking about, Kule." Kunlin leaned back in his chair, stunned. He felt as though the ground had been pulled out from under him. "This doesn't make sense," he muttered, running a hand over his face. "Fiyin, why are you saying this now, after everything you told me?" Fiyin's expression remained unreadable. "I think you should stop this, Kunle. Whatever you're planning, it's wrong to go against a man of God. You'll only bring trouble to yourself." Kunle stared at her, his mind racing. What had changed? Why was she suddenly denying everything? Tunde, who had been silent until now, finally spoke. "Fiyin, I don't know what's going on, but if you've changed your mind, it's okay to be honest about it. You're safe here." "I'm being honest," Fiyin said firmly. "There's nothing to change my mind about. I don't know what Kunle is talking about." Kulne's frustration boiled over. "Fiyin, stop this. You don't have to lie for him. He's manipulating you." Fiyin stood abruptly, her chair scraping against the floor. "I'm not lying. I think it's best I leave now." Kunle reached out to stop her, but Tunde grabbed his arm. "Let her go," Tunde said quietly. Fiyin turned and walked out of the cafe, leaving Kunle staring after her in disbelief. Kunle slumped back in his chair, his head in his hands. "I don't understand," he muttered. "She was ready to expose him. She trusted me. What happened?" Tunde sighed, his face thoughtful. "Something's not adding up. Either she's scared or she's been manipulated in some way." Kunle looked up at him, his eyes filled with despair. "What do we do now? Without her testimony, we have nothing." "We regroup," Tunde said firmly. "This isn't over, Kunle. If Daddy Possibilities is as dangerous as you say, we'll find another way to expose him. But we need to tread carefully. Clearly he's more cunning than we thought." Kunlin nodded slowly, though his heart felt heavy. He couldn't shake the image of Fiyin's blank face and the way she had so casually denied everything. Meanwhile, Fiyin sat in her room, staring at the mirror. Daddy Possibilities' words echoed in her mind. "You're special, Fiyin. If I weren't married, I would have made you my wife. But I love you, and I'll always protect you." His praises and declarations of love had begun to fill the void she didn't know she had. At first, she had been scared and ashamed, but over time she started to crave the attention. No one had ever made her feel as special as Daddy Possibilities did. As much as she tried to push Kunil's words out of her mind, a small voice lingered, questioning if she had made the right choice. But the pastor's influence was strong, and Fiyin found herself clinging to the comfort he provided, no matter how twisted it was. She picked up her phone. Fiyin stared at her phone as she hovered over Kunle's number for the last time. With a deep sigh, she tapped delete and tossed her phone onto her bed. The weight of her decision settled over her like a heavy cloud, but she convinced herself it was for the best. Kunle's probing questions and Tunde's constant reminders made her feel cornered. It was easier this way, she thought. Across town, Kunle sat in his dimly lit living room, his phone resting in his palm. The frustration in his chest burned like a wildfire as his calls to Fiyin went unanswered. He leaned back in his chair, running a hand over his face. "Dollar," he called out to his wife who was in the kitchen. "Yes," she responded, her voice distant. "I can't shake this feeling. Something's not right with Fiyin. I need to speak with her." Tola walked into the living room, drying her hands with a towel. "Kunle, you've been obsessing over this for weeks. If she doesn't want to talk, there's nothing you can do. You'll only drive yourself crazy. But what if she's in danger? What if daddy possibilities?" His voice trailed off. Tola sighed, placing a hand on his shoulder. "You've done all you can. If she's not ready to speak, then you need to let it go. Pray for her." Kunle didn't respond. His gut told him something was terribly wrong, but for now, all he could do was hope she would reach out. In her room, Fiyin scrolled aimlessly through the internet until she stumbled upon an anonymous blog. The header read, "Confess your truth, no judgment, just advice." Curiously, she clicked on it and skimmed through the posts. People shared stories of heartbreak, career struggles, and family issues. Some posts were serious, others seemed trivial. Fiyin bit her lip as she contemplated what to write. The secrecy of it felt comforting. No one would know it was her. Finally, she typed out her post. "I'm a young woman who's been having an affair with a powerful pastor. It started with fear, but now, I don't know what I feel. Someone is trying to help me expose him, but I'm confused. Should I? Or should I just let things continue as they are?" Her finger hovered over the post button before she finally clicked it. Almost instantly, the comments began pouring in. One read, "Expose him. Men like that don't deserve to get away with this." Another said, "You should tell your family and friends and make this public. You'll save other girls from him." But the majority of the responses were different. "You're lucky. Enjoy it while it lasts. He must really like you if he's taking care of you. What's the problem? It's not a bad thing. Don't ruin your blessings." Fiyin's heart raced as she read the comments. The words, "enjoy it," stuck with her. She hadn't thought of it that way before. Maybe this wasn't as wrong as she'd been made to believe. If people thought it wasn't a big deal, maybe it wasn't. The following Sunday, Fiyin received another call from Daddy Possibilities. His tone was warm, almost playful, as he asked to see her after the evening prayer meeting. She agreed, but this time something in her was different. When she walked into his office that evening, she didn't avoid his gaze. Instead, she met his eyes with a steady expression. Daddy Possibilities noticed the shift in her demeanor immediately. "Fiyin, my dear," he began, stepping closer to her. "You seem more relaxed today." Fiyin nodded slightly, her hands clasped in front of her. "I've been thinking about a lot of things, Daddy. I think I understand now." His brows arched in surprise, but a pleased smile spread across his face. He placed a hand gently on her shoulder. "Watch out for the concluding part."